Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, here with Pratt Rogers for our weekly segment on all things Ole Miss sports. And we're going to talk a little recruiting. Pratt, how we doing, buddy?
Man, I love the recruiting stuff. By the way, I got to give you a little bit of a compliment. I love that hoop in the sip shirt.
Thank you. I got this shirt from the College Corner. I ordered it on either Friday or Saturday, and they got it here on Monday. And
That's pretty awesome.
they always do that. I only get my Ole Miss stuff from the College Corner right now because of the service. It's pretty fantastic, and they don't pay me a dime. I just said that out of the kindness of my heart.
Wow. Well, look, it looks good. So, maybe I need to go get one.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. Anyway, so all of the early enrollees are in school, and two players that are not there that we thought was going to be there in December is Marquis Willis and Deion Smith, the two JUCO wide receivers this year. Now, I tell everybody all the time, because they were planning on and they just missed out getting there in the winter, it's not a situation where they're not going to be in school. And honestly, Ole Miss is probably in better shape if they get there in the summer to begin with, because Deion Smith and maybe Marquis Willis, they're both one and dones.
Man, I just have such a hard time with Deion Smith. This has been such an ongoing saga for so long now. I just want him to get in school, Stephen. This is terrible to say. Look, I appreciate your positive mentality on him getting here in the summer, but I'm just ready for him to get here in the spring, do his thing, and learn the playbook and go, man.
Yeah. If there's one course away from him getting here in January, and he's going to be able to take 5 courses in the spring at Holmes Community College, he's going to make it. It would be an abject disaster if he did not. And then he's going to get to Ole Miss and, take the quantitative reasoning and a whole bunch of stuff, and they make sure that he's ready in time for the season. And then hopefully everything's good to go, so he'll be good to go for the playoff. That's the way I think it's going to go. But I think it's the NFL bound is what he's thinking about.
I'm just so excited for him. I'm just ready for him to get there. It's not that I'm concerned about, his skill set or being able to pick things up quickly or learn the Kiffin offense or learn our blocking schemes, anything like that. I'm not concerned about that at all. I just want him to get here because I'm impatient and I'm excited. That's it.
Yeah, he's a Randy Moss talent of football player. And if you think about it, he did kind of the same thing that Randy Moss did, because he started at LSU, he went to JUCOs and kind of bounced around. Randy Moss started, I think, at Notre Dame, then he went to Florida State and ended up at Marshall. So it's kind of, I think this guy has unbelievable talent. I think Marquis Willis is going to surprise some people. And between the two of them, they're going to get put behind the 8 ball, because the big winner in this whole situation is Aiden Williams, Caden Lee, and Noreel White, who has all of spring to kind of get the advantage and advantage Juice Wells, who's in town as well.
Yeah. No, I saw somebody posting somewhere on the boards or social media or something with that. Look, you can look at it that way, that it kind of puts those two guys on notice. They better get in, get to work. Or, you look at it the opposite way too, is, hey, guys like Aiden Williams, Caden Lee have a finite window here to really, make it tough for Deion and Deion Smith and Marquis Willis. And so it's just, you kind of have that window to kind of get right and show what you're made of in practice, while they're not there.
Yeah. And that's the returning players and all that, and the signees that happened back in December. But Ole Miss had its junior day of 2025s. Actually, there were some 2024s in there as well, as Janoris Hobson committed as well. And he is a wide receiver that'll be here in June. He's the brother of Jacoby, who is a really good football player that basically every time Kamarion Franklin was here was just about every weekend of the season. Hobson was here with him, and this being Jacoby Hobson's brother, that probably makes Ole Miss in the driver's seat for the 4-star linebacker.
So you totally beat me to that punch, and I was very late picking up. I picked up like maybe last night or early this morning that they were related. That Janoris and Jacoby are brothers, and it took me way too long to figure it out. Lake Comrade High School really isn't that big, and you should be able to put 2 and 2 together like that. But yeah, you touched all over that. Look, Kamarion Franklin made literally a million trips before his commitment, I felt like, to Oxford. You're totally right. Jacoby was with him every single trip. I think this guy's been an Ole Miss, not lock or maybe highly heavy lean for the last, maybe 6+ months, Stephen. Jacoby's been, I think, all over Ole Miss, and his brother Janoris kind of just popped out of nowhere recently. For me, at least, he wasn't really on my radar. So his commitment was pretty big recently.
Yeah, and besides that, the 2024 almost got a 2025 commitment from Corey Amos as well, and he's a Jack linebacker out of Opelousas, Louisiana, and or Opelousas. I'm probably mispronouncing that, so I apologize, Corey. But he is 6'3", 205 pounds. He probably projects to playing at 6'3", 6'4", 240, 250. Honestly, a Will Anderson build. That's what Pete Golding is trying to find. They're going to have to put him in the training room to get him ready to go, but you redshirt him a little bit, you get him good to go, and this is old style football, played with somebody that is a consensus 4-star on all the surfaces and ranked in their top 300, top 247. So this is a heck of a pickup for Ole Miss.
Yeah, 4-star, the LSU of old, you think 4-star linebacker out of Louisiana, that guy isn't getting out of the state. I mean, those LSU fans will do whatever it takes to keep him. LSU was kind of quiet in this recruitment. Didn't hear much. They could have been all over him. I just didn't hear about it. So glad he's a Rebel. And thought that was a little weird. But look, this is not the LSU of old.
Yeah. And, we talked about the 2025 list and how Jacoby Hobson was it feels like, I'm not saying he's locked up in red and blue, but it just feels like Ole Miss is the team to beat. And you look at the top 10 list, and Ole Miss is leading on like 7 of them right now. And they're not on Caleb Cunningham, who might be the best player. He might be the best player in the country.
I was about to say, look, the state will do whatever it takes to get Caleb Cunningham. He's 10 minutes from campus, basically. Look, I want Lane, if it's going to come down to a fist fight, I want Lane Kiffin and Golding on my team, but that one just may be too much to overcome. But everybody else, I think, is still fair game right now too, Stephen.
Yeah, and you have a situation, they don't have a lot of money. Their NIL situation, everybody knows it's a pretty dire situation, but they're going to bankroll and try and get that PR win, because getting him would be a PR win. Now, if you look at number 2 on the list is like Deuce Knight. He's committed to Notre Dame.
Yep.
That is not over. Nobody needs to even act like it's over. Lane Kiffin's still recruiting the heck out of that kid. And I think at the end of the day, it might look like an AJ Maddox type situation where at the end he ends up in Oxford. But after that, Andrew Maddox, obviously his brother's at Ole Miss. Akylin Dear, obviously he's been crystal ball to Ole Miss, and by all accounts, he is feeling himself on social media about his trip to Ole Miss at the moment. And it's just player after player after player goes down. It's like Ole Miss is leading on all these guys. Mississippi State's only in the top 2 for like 2 or 3 of them. It's mostly like Ole Miss versus Auburn, Ole Miss versus LSU, Ole Miss versus Florida. And it honestly looks real similar to the way it did at the beginning of this 2024 cycle that Ole Miss did so well in. And I guess Ole Miss fans should take heart in that.
Yep, totally agree. Look, I mean, it's The state stuff, they will always end up with 1, 2, or 3 guys exactly like this class. Look, Ole Miss ended up with what, like 7 out of the top 9 guys or something like that in the last class, but the other 2 were state guys, and they're going to get their couple guys no matter what. And you just go ahead and write off 2 or 3 guys in the state no matter what. But yeah, I agree. Look, Auburn's probably with Freeze and his, Mississippi ties and being able to pull a Coach Nix.
Is that what you want to call it?
That's what I'll call it. Yeah. Look, I think Auburn's going to be a player for a lot of these Mississippi kids, probably more so than State in the upcoming future. So
they have the Ole Miss coaching staff from 2013. Yeah.
Gives them a good reason to be. Yeah.
But the downside of that is how are they going to recruit in their own home's area? That's going to be interesting to see how Auburn recruits Alabama and how Alabama recruits Alabama.
Look, I think this will be the first time in probably my lifetime, really, that the state of Alabama you at least have a puncher's chance to go in there and get a top guy. I mean, you didn't have a snowball's chance to end up pulling a top guy out of Alabama. Now, I mean, with Pete Golding and our connections, I'm not counting us out by any means. So I'm kind of interested to see where that ends up personally, where the recruitment of the state of Alabama ends up in 2024 or 2025 class, 2026, and so forth.
Before we get out of here, let's talk about Akylin Dear a little bit. They're running back out of Quitman, Mississippi. He's about 205 pounds. He's about 5'11". He's pretty much a stereotypical top 100 running back that you would think of. He is somebody that when you watch his film, it looks like he's much smaller because of how well that he moves. And his footwork is just insane, lateral side to side. Honestly, it reminds you of a number 4 that was in Ole Miss's uniforms the last couple of years. I knew
you were about to say that.
And I think this is the most important player for Ole Miss in this recruiting class. It's not Deuce Knight. It's not Caleb Cunningham. It's Akylin Dear. And that is because running backs, for whatever reason in the state of Mississippi, last year, one went to Stanford. The year before, he went to Oregon. The year before, he went to Georgia. Ole Miss and Mississippi State and everybody have struggled to keep running backs at home. That needs to change.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it like a position breakdown like that, but I mean, like exactly right. Dowdell, all those guys. I mean, it's been a while. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, what made
Cam Akers?
Cam Akers. Don't even say that word on this show. But anyway, you mentioned a number 4 and being shifty. Look, I think that what made Quinshawn special was kind of his side to side one cut before you hit the whole movement. And I could totally see why you say that about Akylin Dear.
Yeah. He has a chance to be a very, very special running back at Ole Miss. You watch his highlights and look at it. If he'd sign up and come to Ole Miss, it's just touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I mean, the whole highlight is just a touchdown flash reel. And we're not talking about Alvin Henderson, who Ole Miss is recruiting Alvin Henderson as well, but he's like 180-pound little bitty Dexter McCluster type that ran for about 4,000 yards last year in Alabama. But Akylin Dear is the number 1. He is the guy that I think Lane Kiffin and Kevin Smith is going to go all out for in recruiting.
Yep, I wouldn't doubt that. I think he's an extremely important piece. I like the way you phrased that, though, for sure, Stephen. But I do have to ask you while I got you, who do you think the next guy to pop is?
The next commitment?
Yeah.
Well, right now, I don't think he's going to do it. And they're going. He shouldn't do it, honestly, in this age of NIL and all that. But Dear is like, he's all over social media posting about his Ole Miss Junior Day. But I think it'll be somebody like Fred Thomas's son. I think Jace Thomas.
Yeah.
Somebody like that. I don't think it'll be one of the top 100 or top 250 type guys.
So I don't either. All those guys always hang around because they have an
Mhm.
offer from everybody, but you hope it's somebody like an Andrew Maddox who's obviously got the Ole Miss
Mhm.
connection, and really kind of become that stalwart for the class, so to speak. You always want to get one of those guys in early. So anyway,
I think
I've
Mississippi has 5 top 100 players this year.
Mississippi always just we always have a top
Stacked.
heavy state. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nuts. And listen, this class is going to go through their entire recruitment. And even the yeah but fans, everybody talking about what's going on. And whenever something's always wrong and you're worried about recruiting and all that, just remember all of these kids are going to go through recruiting with Ole Miss being on ESPN articles as a potential host for a playoff game. All of that hype is going to carry all the way through until December, and then the signing day. So
Yeah.
this has a chance, like everything's in position for Ole Miss to have its absolute best recruiting year that it has had. It's all there. Now, I realize they want to do a lot of the portal stuff, and I get all that. But Ole Miss should be very successful on the high school end because of all of this stuff that's going to be happening parallel to their recruitment.
Well, I got it. So since we've popped our first 2025 commit, I got to ask you before we really get rolling with the class, where do you think this class ends up ranking wise? I know it's skewed with portal slash high school, but a true high school ranking, where do you think we end up? I'm
Well,
going to hold you to it at the end of the year. Don't flake out on me.
last year was 20.
Yeah, I
Last
was
year's
going to say
class finished at
19.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah. I figure this year it depends on how many they take. But if they have a relatively the same size type class, I could see this class somewhere between 17 and 15.
Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised.
Uh, Now, if they went all in on high school and just decided to do that, they could probably be somewhere around 10 to 12.
So I've got a kind of conspiracy theory almost that Kiffin. I think we've talked about it a lot. That Kiffin's really gone all in on this season, and assuming we have a great season, like a 10-2, 11-1 type season, I think Kiffin kind of recognizes it can be done in Knoxford and goes heavy on high school, strictly because he says I'm going to be here for the long haul. I can do this. I'm going heavier in high school than I have in the past. You
I
don't you
think
don't agree?
I think as heavy as he goes is what he did last year.
Okay, all righty.
Yeah. Until
I
everybody catches up on the transfer portal, until he can't go out and grab a Walter Nolan and Princely and Mommy Ellen. Kiffin's going to go after those guys.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now the way this is going to work, I don't think that programs are going to exist anymore to where the football program is so no, you're going to have the 2023 team, the 2024 team, and you just try to maximize each particular one because of the portal and all of NIL and all of that stuff. And because of that, I think that the person that gets the high school players are the rebuilders. I think high school
Wow. So
recruiting is
you look
about
at it
to be
literally the
managed.
exact opposite that I
Mhm.
think could happen in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows like what turmoil there is right now.
Well, speaking of which, Dartmouth's men basketball team was approved by the National Labor and Relations Board as employees of the university and told that they could form a union. And if that happens, now it's going to be appealed by Dartmouth, and so it's not over yet. But if that result holds and it eventually wins out, that is the end of Title IX. That is the end of basically every college athletic that is not revenue producing. I mean, football would still be there, basketball will still be there, maybe baseball, maybe baseball. If so, it'd be a very small Southern League type situation because it would all be in the Southeast.
Yeah.
But Title IX's gone if they go into employees and they treat this like a true business. And it just comes down to businesses that make money. I think women's basketball might survive. That's about it.
Man, I hate hearing that. Like,
Mhm.
I'm all for them getting paid. We both talked about this. I'm all for, compensation of working hard. And I just, I don't know, man. I hate where the future could go.
Mhm.
I'm perfectly happy with everybody, everybody deserving compensation, but I think everybody is just so fed up with the wild, wild west, and the potential for what it could become is the scary part. I mean, today it's not under control at all, but people like Kiffin are finding ways to control the uncontrollable, so to speak. I mean, looking up in 3, 5 years, if this continues to go on, the portal gets more and more expensive. It's eventually unsustainable. So it'll be very interesting. But
Well, the
yeah,
SEC and the Big
that
Ten,
ruling for Dartmouth will be pretty crazy. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
and the SEC and the Big Ten have formed their advisory thing to where basically that's a shot across the bow. That's the SEC and the Big Ten saying, "Get your house in order, or we're going to go
Yeah,
do our own thing."
yeah, that was the most subtle way of saying, "Hey, we're here for the future. The big
Mhm.
dogs are here now."
Yeah, but if it's a situation to where all of this happens and this Dartmouth wins, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're gone. They're going to form something called college athletics or something like that, to
Yeah,
where they just have 30 or 40 teams. They all play very insulated and they become their own thing. They pay their athletes and all that. And maybe that allows college athletics underneath the Power Five to kind of stabilize, because there's no money below the Power Five. It's just get those 50, 60 teams out of there and just let the
yeah,
other one, because the quarterback at Delta State, even though he won the Connerly, I guarantee you he doesn't even get a free cup of coffee from time to time. The problem that the NCAA sees it is with the upper 50 or 60 teams. The
yeah.
upper 50 and 60 teams do not want to be governed like Delta State. And there's the disconnect. And I
Totally.
think they just need to set them up as employees. Once that happens, that's going to change everything. But that's going to allow universities to put players under contract to where they can't every year go into this yearly free agent. You can have a 4-year contract to where basically they're tied in contractually to your organization.
I'd be totally fine with that.
Mhm.
Look, I completely agree that if you were paid for your service, you deserve to have some sort of locked in payment for that and a plan with that. I mean, that's kind of America 101 for
Mhm.
anybody who's salaried.
But
It's
but
give me
also,
X service, we'll pay you Y amount.
yeah, and also the person that is paying for the service, they need to be protected too. And right now the universities are not.
For sure.
Man. Yeah, right now it's so one-sided one way. And you got a whole bunch of people that are going to benefit from the chaos, like Texas and Texas A&M. They're never going to vote for NIL reform at all because they have more money than God, and they thrive in this chaos environment. But we'll see how it goes. I'm really curious because like I said, Dartmouth is going to um, appeal, and we'll see exactly where it goes.
Yeah, strange times.
Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Pratt Rogers, thank you so much, buddy. See you next week.
Thanks, my man. See ya. Bye.